Hello magical minds, welcome to EDUATTACK. Today we will study about Payment of Wages Act 1936. We will discuss about all the important provisions of the act. We will discuss sections with proper examples. So let's start the act and finish it off. What is the first thing which comes in mind is why this Payment of Wages Act came? What was the reason? Were there, suppose the name only suggesting Payment of Wages Act. So it means that there was some kind of problem in wages. So what wages? Employer and employee. What does an employer provides to employees? Wages. So in providing wages, employees were facing some kind of problem. What were those problems? Those problems were untimely payment, penalty, fines. Employer used to pay wages to employees untimely without any time frame. Employer used to charge penalty, fines, unnecessary fines, without giving any clarification to the employee that for what reason this fine has been imposed on them. Third is non-uniformity. In some month or in some wage period, the employer used to pay wages to employees some amount and the other month or the other wage period some amount. So this was non-uniform, irregular payment. The payment cycle was not according to the wage period. So the employees were facing a huge problem with these three issues. So the need came and the government came with a solution. So what was the solution? Payment of Wages Act 1936 came and it provided timely and uniformity in payment of wages. Deductions to be allowed are specified. The employer used to deduct amount unnecessary. So government prescribes some deductions which we will study further. That deduction can only employer deduct from the wages, from the employee's wages, which are specified. We will discuss what are the deductions which are specified in this act. So let's see what is the object of the act. The main object of the act is to regulate the payment of wages act. To regulate payment of wages. First of all, Payment of Wages Act 1936 is a central legislation enacted to regulate the payment of wages to workers employed in certain specified industries. We will read what are the certain specified industries. We will discuss in detail. To ensure a speedy and effective remedy to them. To them means here employees against illegal deductions and or unjustified delay caused in paying wages. So these are the object of the act. Once again, to regulate the payment of wages to workers who are employed in certain specified industries, to ensure a speedy and effective remedy against illegal deductions and unjustified delay caused in paying wages. So this object is the main soul of the Payment of Wages Act. Now let's see further. Assent. The Payment of Wages Act got assent on 23rd April 1936 and came into force on 28th 1937. Applicable, it is applicable whole of India, and Jammu and Kashmir was added in 1970 by an amendment. Now let's see the definition. The appropriate government definition is given under section 2 clause I. Generally there is two types of government. One is central government and one is state government, that we call in the act appropriate government. So what are the powers of central government? So in relation to railways, in relation to air transport services, and in relation to mines and oil fields, the power to make rules is vested on central government. Central government has power to make rules in these subjects: railway, air transport services, mines and oil fields. And other than these things, the state government has power to make rules. Clear? Right? Ministry of Labor and Employment can revise wages through NSSO, National Sample Survey Organization, within 5 years generally, according to consumer expenditure level cost of living. It may be noted that the employees drawing wages up to Rs 24,000 are covered under this act. So this is your 24,000 per month. This is the base. This is the base of the act. This is the wages up to 20, the employees who are earning or who are drawing wages up to rupees 24,000 per month. These employees are covered under this act, Payment of Wages Act. If you are earning 24,001 rupees also, then you are out from this act. So how does this 24,000 is prescribed here? What is the main reason behind it? So Ministry of Labour and Employment revise wages, this wage 24,000, within 5 years generally through NSSO, National Sample Survey Organization. They make a survey, and according to the consumer expenditure level and cost of living, the standard of living, the sample organization, the survey is being conducted, and according to the result of the survey, this 24,000 per month or any figure is being mentioned by the NSSO and declared by the Ministry of Labour and Employment. This is the 24,000 per month here. Previous to 24,000 it was 18,000. 24,000 came by an amendment. Now let's see that amendment. So on Ministry of Labour and Employment notified on and dated on 28th August 2017, it is the amendment date here. Central government, on the basis of figures of consumer expenditure survey published by the NSSO, National Sample Survey Organization, NSSO, hereby specifies rupees 24,000 per month, 24,000 per month as the wages. So this is the amendment here. Okay, I have snapped this notification from the ministry site to make you understand. Now what is the application here? To whom does the Payment of Wages Act applies? To every factory, railway administration and industrial or other establishment. Now what is the industrial and other establishment? So there is basically a full list here. We have to discuss one by one. Industrial or other establishment includes tramway service or motor transport services. The people who are working in tramway service or motor transport services and who are earning wages or drawing wages up to rupees 24,000 per month are covered under the Payment of Wages Act. Air transport services, the people who are giving services in air transport other than Army, Navy, Air Force are covered under this act. So why does this other than written? Other than means here is exception. The person who are working in Army, Navy, Air Force are not covered under this act. They have their different acts. So we will not go in their act. Air transport services other than Army, Navy, Air Force. Those people who are working other than Navy, Army, Air Force are covered under the Payment of Wages Act. Dock, wharf or jetty. What is dock, wharf or jetty? When there is a ship comes on the dock, the cargo is get loaded and unloaded. So that the place where the cargo loaded and unloaded is a dock. We can say wharf or jetty. There is a very less differentiation between jetty and dock wharf. More probably these are the only one thing. Now inland vessels also, the persons who are working in mines, quarry, oil field, plantation services, who are growing crops, and the people who are working in workshops, doing a process of manufacturing, production and absorptions. In this process, the people who are working in workshops are covered under the Payment of Wages Act. Building related work of construction and development, water supply, the people who are in the charge of supplying water, electricity department where generation, transmission and distribution process is being carried on, and as may be prescribed. So this is the list here. The people who are working in these things are covered under the act and who are drawing wages up to rupees 24,000 only. Okay, clear, right? Now comes the meaning of wages. We are discussing about Payment of Wages Act. So what is the definition of wages here? So the definition of wages means that wages means all remuneration, whether by way of salary, allowances or otherwise, expressed in terms of money or capable of being so expressed if the terms of employment, expressed or employed were fulfilled. All remuneration, wages means all remunerations, all allowances, and the things which comes under the terms of employment by the company or by the organization. And the wages also include any court settlement award. The court has given some kind of award means decision here, overtime, holiday wages and leave period wages, additional remuneration, bonus, termination remuneration. Now just keep a mind on this bonus, we will discuss about this bonus. Any additional remuneration payable under the terms of employment, whether called a bonus or by any other name. See, if any additional remuneration which is payable under the terms of the employment of that employee, whether it is a bonus or not, that will be covered under the meaning of wages. And when we are calculating that rupees 24,000, we will see everything. We will calculate everything while calculating the wages here. Clear? And now comes a very important question, that the term wages does not include. What are the things the term wages does not include? So in calculating this, the 24,000 rupees, some of the things we have to exclude from calculating the wages. What are those things? Bonus and additional remuneration which are not a part of terms of employment. We have seen that we have to include those things only which comes under the terms of employment. And bonus and additional remuneration, whatever kind of it, if it is not under the terms of employment, we will not add on the definition of wages and we will not calculate it. Secondly, house rent allowances. I think you have read this things term HRA in your text, direct text. So HRA is also not included in the term wages. I have seen many MCQ type of question. Usually an examiner do ask such things, that HRA is included in the definition of wages or not. So it's a very common questions here. If you're facing an MCQ paper, then surely examiner can ask these things. Perquisites like light, water, medical attendance or other services which are excluded from the calculation of wages by a general or special order of appropriate government. PF contribution by employer interest on it, will not calculate. Any provident fund. Leave travel concession, we will not take it. Gratuity, we will not take it. And reimbursement of expenses. If any expenses which an employee has done and the employer is giving back to him, so that money or that expenses, the money, if you have expended something, if you bought things, if you are facing any expenses, and if you go to an employer kind of companies, there is a rule that if employee faces some kind of expenses which are in the office related work, the employer is duly obliged to reimburse those expenses. So here those reimbursement of expenses will not be covered under the definition of wages here. So these are the things which we will exclude from the term wages. I hope it is clear. Let's go further. Responsibility of payment of wages. Section 3 of the Payment of Wages Act prescribed responsibilities for the payment of wages. In relation to factories, factory is a place where employees are working, providing their services to the factories, and the owner is the employer here. So in factory, whom responsible to give the payment? So in every factory, there is a manager. As per Factories Act 1948, who is a responsible person for Payment of Wages Act according to Section 3 of the Act. Railway administration. In railway administration, the person who is responsible for payment of wages is the person which is appointed by the local area concerned. Railway administration network is all over the country. There is impossible for one person to be responsible. So they choose according to the local area concerned a person, and that person be responsible for payment of wages. Industrial or other establishment. In industrial or other establishment, which we have seen a list earlier only, the person whose supervision and control the payment of wages is given. So any employer can give the supervision and control to any hand, and that person will be a responsible person according to section 3 here. And in case of work of contract, a person designated by such contractor, even a contractor can also be a responsible person. Contractor himself can also be covered under this section 3, and that the work of that contractor he can designate to another person also, that he can choose a person to be responsible for payment of wages. And in any other case except these 4, if any other case comes, any person can be a responsible person if it is designated or appointed by an employer. And now section 4 says no wage period shall exceed 1 month. Now what is this wage period? Wage period means basically a work cycle. The work cycle can be of 7 days, 10 days, 15 days, 20 days, 25 days, 30 days. 35? No, 35 cannot possible. Because the section 4 is saying no wage period shall exceed 1 month. 30 days wage period can only be according to section 4. This is basically between a mutual understanding between an employer and employee. They carry a mutual understanding, and based on the understanding they prescribe the wage period. So if your wage period exceeding 1 month, then that will be the contravention of section 4. Now section 5 says timely payment of wages. The crux of the act comes here. Timely payment of wages. These were the main problems used to face by employees. So the government made a rule under section 5 that wages to be paid before the expiry of 7th day of the month for railway, factory, industrial establishment with less than 1,000 employees. What does this section 5 means? If there is a employees who are working in any railway, factory or industrial establishment where there is less than 1,000 employees, then in that case the employer has to pay the wages before the expiry of 7th day of the month. What does that mean? If a wage period is supposed from 1 April to 30th April, this is your wage period of 30 days. Then in that case, the employer has to pay wages before the expiry of 7th May. This is the crux here. I hope you got me correct by this example, section 5. Now next point is, if in any railway, factory or industrial establishment where the employees are working and are more than 1,000 employees, then the employer has to pay before the expiry of 10th day of the month. So in this case it will be 10th May, before the expiry of month. Wages to be paid before expiry of 2nd day from the termination for terminated employees. If an employee is terminated, so that terminated employee should be paid wages before the expiry of 2nd day from which date? From the termination date. Clear? Now last one is, in currency, coins or notes and by checks or by crediting the wages in the employee's bank account. The payment of wages can be made by any currency, coins, notes or by check. Yeah. Or by crediting the wages in the employee's bank account. Earlier, what was the case is, if an employer wants to credit the wages to an employee's bank account, he used to take a permission from the employee that can he transfer money to his bank account or not. So this is an amendment here came here. So there is no need to ask any employee before transferring the money in his bank account. Clear? So section 5 finishes here. Now section 7 comes. Most important, deduction from wages of employee. So these are the allotted deductions, allowable deductions, which the Act has prescribed. The Act prescribed this deduction under Section 7 of the Act. So what are the deductions which are allowable? Some fines, absence from duty, damage if employee is making a damage to the property of the employer or loss of goods, housing accommodation if the employer is providing a housing accommodation and providing amenities to the employee, then the employer can deduct those amount. Recovery of advances, recovery of loans, repayment of advances, even income tax he can deduct income tax from the wages of an employee without asking them. Payment to cooperative societies approved by the state government or to a scheme of insurance maintained by the Indian Post Office. In this case also Section 7 prescribes deductions from the wages of an employee. Now the 10th deduction is deductions made with written authorization. In this case you have to take a written authorization from the employee for payment of any premium, life insurance premium on his life insurance policy, or even if he wants to purchase securities. If employer wants to purchase securities from the wages of employees, then in future he will definitely provide those securities for the welfare of that employee. Then in that case also he can take that amount. He can deduct that amount according to Section 7 of the Act. Now Section 7 subsection 3 of the Payment of Wages Act 1936 says that the total deductions in case of cooperative societies, while paying to a cooperative society, an employer can deduct from the wages of an employee up to 75% only, not more than this. And other than a cooperative societies, 50%. He can't take all the wages in deductions only. The government has prescribed that if it is the case of cooperative society, then it will be 75%, and in any other case there will be 50% of such wages can get deducted by the employer. That is a valid deductions here. Clear? This 75 and 50 also comes in exam. Now Section 13 capital A, maintenance of registers and records. Employer shall maintain register and records. Basically register and record, they are the main proof for any company or any organization. So Section 13 capital A in the Payment of Wages Act is saying that every employer shall maintain a register and records for persons employed by him. The persons in that time frame is employed by him, works performed by the employees, and deductions from the wages of employees. All these three things has to be written properly and recorded in the registers of the employer, and it shall be kept at least, and it should be maintained for at least 3 years after the last entry made. He has to preserve those registers and records for at least 3 years after the last entry made. Section 13 capital A is saying these things. Clear? Now Section 15, penalty sections, our last section here. Penalty. Suppose there is a X, an employer. He is an employer in an organization, and there is a Y, an employee. Employer deduct rupees 1000 as a deduction. He deduct 1000 rupees from the employee. Employee is not agreeing for that deduction. He files a suit in a labor court or tribunal, or as the authority may be. He files the suit in the authority, and suppose Y wins the case. Y win the suit. Now employer will pay compensation for that illegal deduction. Here illegal deduction is rupees 1000 is illegal deduction. Now employer will pay according to Section 15 how much amount? 10 times of the deducted amount. So what was the deducted amount? 1000. 1000 into 10. 10,000 rupees. And plus and 1500 minimum fine. He will pay minimum 1500 fine. Minimum he has to pay that amount. Or maximum that 1500 can go up to rupees 3000, not more than 3000 or 3000. 1500 is a minimum fine which is excluded from that 10,000, means 10,000 plus 1500 or 10,000 plus 3,000, as per the case maybe. That 3,000 is maximum amount. So section 15, employer is paying a large amount of fine. Now there is also one case here. If the amount deducted paid before the disposal of application, disposal of application means when a suit is in favor of someone or someone, means an employee is winning the case or employer is winning the case. That process is the disposal of application. That application gets ended here. So if any amount is deducted, that suppose we are going to that previous example only, if the amount deducted is rupees 1000 and it is paid before the disposal of application, if employer got scared and he paid the deducted amount, then in that case the authority will charge not more than rupees 2000. Means here employer is saving himself from that rupees 10 times penalty. Okay, right? You're understanding what I'm trying to say? Here employer is saving himself from that harsh fine. Now last fine is employee will pay for malicious claims. If employee is paying, employee will pay for any malicious claims. If employee is claiming undue claims from the employer, then in that case employee will pay 375 rupees as fine. Now it shall be noted that any employee who is under the age of 15 years will not pay any kind of fine to any employer or any authority. And one more thing I have to tell you, that according to section 8 of this act, a fine, that maximum fine an employer can impose on an employee is 3% of the wages. Not more than 3% of the wages employee will not pay to any employer. So these were the penalty and fines related sections. I hope you are clear. Thank you, and kindly subscribe our channel EDUATTACK for more law related topics. Thank you. Keep learning.